What if Anakin fell in love with Barriss Offee? Let's start today's story right after the Phantom Menace when Anakin arrived at the Jedi Temple for his first proper day of training. He was nervous and had been thinking about this day for a while. For the last few days, Obi-Wan had been trying to prepare him as best as he could, but he knew the culture shock would be immense for Anakin, coming from the sandy dunes of Tatooine. As Anakin strides the hall of the temple, he navigates its complex layout until he arrives at his first ever class, which was about the Force and taught by Master Yoda. When Anakin walks in, the seats are completely full, except for one where he quickly scurries over and takes a seat. Anakin takes a big gulp and feels his heart begin to race. He had never seen anything like this and just wanted to get through his first day safely. But unfortunately, it wouldn't be that easy. As he sat there and waited for the class to begin, 3 young boys came up to him and started picking on him. They mocked him for being the chosen one and told him to go back to Tatooine. Anakin didn't know what to say and was shocked. He just wanted to make friends, but for some reason these boys just kept picking out random things they didn't like about him and essentially throwing it in his face. He wanted this to stop. He felt his sadness and also his anger inside of him rise, the anger that he knew had always been there since he grew up on Tatooine. But when he thought back to the desert place, he recalled that he had many friends and he wouldn't get picked on. He wondered why the temple was any different. As the boys continued to tease him, he heard a voice from the corner. It was a young girl, and she quickly came up beside the 3 bullies and told them to get lost, that if they ever teased Anakin again, she would take them down. The boys quickly scurried back to their seats across the classroom. Before Anakin could say a word, the young girl shook Anakin's hand and introduced herself as Barriss Offee. Anakin thanked her for what she did, but she assured him those boys are just bullies and to not pay attention to them. Barriss quickly takes a seat next to Anakin as Master Yoda struts in and begins the class. Over the course of the next hour, Anakin and Barriss become immediate friends. Barriss was 8 years old and Anakin was 9. Despite being such an age, the things Anakin learned came quickly to him. His chosen one genetics allowed him to master Force techniques far quicker than other younglings. But while he was gifted in the Force, she was gifted in fitting in. He confided in Barriss about this, and she said that she was struggling with one of those Force levitation techniques that Master Yoda was trying to teach them. They agreed to help each other, with Anakin assisting in teaching the Force and Barriss making Anakin feel more at home at the Jedi Temple. They agreed to hang out after class, which for Jedi initiates wasn't that common. They would run around the Jedi Temple and laugh and play, and their connection was immediate. Though of course they were just friends. At this young age, having this connection just caused them to become best friends, and they had no idea of anything related to romance. And nor should they as Jedi. Over the coming weeks, they would learn everything there is to know about each other. Anakin was particularly interesting for Barriss, considering he was an outsider. He was different to anyone she had ever met. Barriss arrived at the temple as a little infant and since then had only really talked to other younglings who had the same life experience as her. But then walks in Anakin, who grew up on Tatooine and had a family and had even seen battle, which he made sure to brag about whenever he could. Barriss would ask Anakin what it's like to know your mother, and while Anakin would explain the warm feeling of family, it also made him sad, knowing that he would most likely never see her again. The one person in the galaxy who truly would do anything for him. Anakin and Barriss were in the same classes together, and they would do projects, tests, and study together. They became inseparable. Every time Anakin was bullied by his classmates, which was a lot, especially at the beginning of his Jedi lessons, Barriss was there to help him, and she often confronted the bullies and told them to stop. This only brought Anakin and Barriss closer together, and very quickly, their friendship motto became Anakin and Barriss against the galaxy. Obi-Wan quickly notices his strong friendship with Barriss, but he encourages it. Kenobi was honestly just happy to see that Anakin had made a friend, knowing how difficult the last few months for him had been, after being separated from his mother and losing Qui-Gon. Having someone constant in his life like Barriss would be good for him. And so, Anakin and Barriss would be inseparable friends as they grew up in the Jedi Order. A few years pass and Anakin is 16 years old while Barriss is 15. A lot has changed in the last 7 years, with both young Jedi becoming extremely proficient in the Force. Over the last 7 years, their friendship had grown into an unbreakable bond. They would do anything for each other. Barriss is now Luminara Unduli's Padawan, while Anakin continues to grow under Obi-Wan's tutelage. But what this meant was that they don't see each other much. They both hated this, as their relationship up until this point meant they spent every day together. One night they snuck out of the temple and into the lower levels of Coruscant, which was forbidden for young Jedi, but together they went and purchased 2 private comlink devices so that they would be able to remain in contact with one another even if someone was off-world. Therefore, despite Anakin traveling to Ryloth with Obi-Wan, or Barriss being sent to Mandalore, they could still speak to each other every day and their bond deepened. And when they were back at the temple, they would spend endless time together. This routine worked fine for Anakin, as Obi-Wan wasn't overly strict and interpreted their relationship as something good for Anakin. But Luminara, on the other hand, was a far more strict teacher. She began to think that Barriss was growing an attachment for Anakin, so as time went on, she had to get more sneaky with how she saw and spoke to Anakin. Whenever they were together, Barriss would speak of the lessons that Luminara was teaching her about attachments, and about how attachments as a Jedi are forbidden, and to create one could cause you to fall to the dark side. But Anakin would reject this, and he'd tell her stories about his mother, and how having her in his life only made him feel like a better person. Barriss preferred Anakin's outlook on life, and without the two even realizing it, they had developed an attachment. It might not have been a romantic one, but at least a friendship attachment. Everyone in the Order knew Barriss and Anakin as best friends. The Council even had to question Luminara and Obi-Wan about this 3 years prior, but both masters assured they would keep an eye on them to assure their friendship didn't become an attachment. Despite each other often being away with their masters, whenever they were back at the temple, they would constantly hang out and spend time together. One time when Barriss returned from a mission with Luminara, she and Anakin caught up in the Room of 1,000 Fountains. As they slowly walked throughout the large greenhouse at the base of the Jedi Temple, Barriss began to rant about Carnelian 4, where she and Luminara were forced to withdraw, leaving civilians and family behind to avoid political fallout. She rants to Anakin about how wrong it felt to walk away. Anakin consoles Barriss as they walked past a large waterfall and huge amounts of flora. She confesses the assignment made her think about her own family, and how the Jedi Order teaches Jedi to let go of everyone they once loved. Anakin said he understood and that he misses his mother every day. He said one of the hardest things about joining the Jedi for him was that he already had a formed attachment with his mother. They were both sad about this, and they walked through the Room of 1,000 Fountains in silence for a while. But then Anakin admits that he has a brash and foolish idea. He told her they should go and visit their families. I mean, it could probably help them both to see them, to hug their parents and get grounded again. Barriss at first wasn't sure, but Anakin quickly convinced her. That night, Anakin and Barriss sneak out of the Jedi Temple and take a Jedi starfighter, leaving Coruscant behind and traveling first to Miriel, so Barriss can finally see where she came from. Like Tatooine, Miriel was a dry desert planet in the Outer Rim, and Anakin and Barriss landed in the capital and made their way to the palace. They strode through the halls, holding each other's hands as they searched for the records on the Offees to learn where her family is. However, as they search the records, Barriss is heartbroken when she learns her parents were killed in a terrorist attack not long ago. She was devastated, and Anakin consoled her. She felt like a deer in headlights, unable to move. She spoke callously to Anakin, as though all her emotions and articulation were gone. She was cold. Anakin let her be for a few hours as she accepted the truth, and he went into town to buy her some nice flowers to cheer her up. After finding her favorites, candlewick flowers, which were native to Alderaan, he went back to the palace to find her. She had calmed down and was very thankful when she saw Anakin arriving with flowers. She gave him a hug, and Anakin again gave his condolences. When she was ready, they both went back to their starfighter and left the planet, setting course for Tatooine, which they arrived at hours later and landed in the hangar bay in Mos Espa. Similar to Attack of the Clones, Anakin speaks with Watto, who says he released her to the Lars family on the outskirts of Mos Eisley, and so they go to the Lars homestead, and for the first time in 7 years, Anakin is reunited with his mother. They spend the evening at the Lars homestead, sitting outside as the twin suns slowly fall, eating a simple meal and talking about Anakin's childhood, about pod racing, and about the life he was forced to leave behind. Barriss watches Anakin with his mother, seeing how relaxed and whole he looks for the first time since he's known him, and it makes her realize just how much of himself he's always been missing. Later, as the homestead grows quiet and the twin suns dip below the horizon, Anakin and Barriss walk a short distance away together, the desert air warm and still. They stop, and as he looks out over the twin suns, Anakin is finally at peace and feels the most happiness in the world. He looks at Barriss in the eyes and finally admits that he's loved her for as long as he can remember, and that she's been a constant in his life that never made sense. Barriss confesses she felt the same way her entire life, and without another word, they kiss for the first time, knowing deep down that his feeling was never sudden, it had always been there. Anakin and Barriss say their goodbyes to Shmi and the Lars, and they head back to Coruscant. They find Obi-Wan and Luminara waiting for them. They are both summoned to the council chambers as they were expecting to be, and the council assigns them to 3 months of Jedi Archives duty. This was the most boring task in the temple, but both Barriss and Anakin thought it was worth it. For Barriss, she learnt the truth about her family and finally got closure, and Anakin was able to see his mother was free and happy again. And for the both of them, they finally confessed their love, and now they began the terrifying task of traversing whatever strange journey they had coming. 3 years passed and Anakin and Barriss are still together, deeply in love but forced to keep their relationship secret. Careful around the temple and even more careful on missions, because they both know what would happen if the council ever found out. When Anakin is 19, he's assigned to protect Padme Amidala, traveling with her to Naboo where she clearly begins to develop feelings for him. But this time, Anakin never reciprocates, remaining polite and like an old friend from when he was a little boy on Tatooine, but we never see him flirt and fall in love like in Attack of the Clones. His heart already belongs to someone else. When they're on Naboo, Anakin receives a sudden message from Cliegg Lars saying that his mother has been taken by Tuscan raiders. The words hit Anakin like a physical blow, and without hesitation, he tells Padme he has to leave. She insists on coming with him, and before setting course, Anakin contacts Barriss, who agrees to meet them on Tatooine. Together, the three of them search the dunes until they finally locate the Tuscan Raider camp, discovering that Shmi has only been held for 3 days, not weeks on end like in the original timeline. This means that Shmi doesn't die in Anakin's arms, and they are able to bring her back to the Lars homestead. With Barriss at Anakin's side, keeping him grounded and remaining who he is, Anakin doesn't lose himself to rage. Instead of killing the entire camp, he ignites the Sapphire Blade and tells them that if they ever step foot near the Lars home again, he will personally destroy them all. Shmi was brought home safely and Anakin's soul remained intact. Soon after, the Clone Wars begin, and Anakin and Barriss find themselves fighting side by side across the galaxy. Anakin is eventually given an apprentice of his own, Ahsoka Tano, while Barriss passes her trials and becomes a Jedi Knight, and for the first time in their lives, everything feels balanced. Over the course of the war, Anakin and Barriss develop a rare Force bond, one that only forms between Force users who are truly in love, allowing them to sense each other's thoughts, emotions, and intentions almost instantly, communicating entire plans in the blink of an eye without ever speaking. This ability was almost completely lost to the Jedi, as they never encouraged love in the Order, so the ability was sort of just forgotten about. But Anakin and Barriss developed it together, and their bond only deepened their ability. They keep their relationship hidden from the Order, but privately they build a life together, sharing quiet moments between campaigns and grounding each other after losses, and eventually marrying in secret. Barriss understands Anakin in a way no one else ever could, because she lives the same life he does, feels the same pressure, and carries the same burden of the Force. In this timeline, Palpatine's manipulation of Anakin is far less effective, because Barriss is always there to challenge his fears and steady his emotions, and pull him back when he starts to spiral, and unlike Padme, she can truly relate to the darkness he feels sometimes. On top of that, Anakin never slaughters the Tuscan Raiders, and Shmi Skywalker is still alive, meaning two of the biggest emotional scars that push him towards the dark side simply never existed, and as the war rages on, Anakin Skywalker is not a man slowly falling apart, but a Jedi, who for once has something real holding him together. By the time of Revenge of the Sith, the Council sends Anakin, Obi-Wan, Barriss and Luminara to the Invisible Hand to search for Palpatine. They split up as Anakin and Barriss search for the Chancellor while Obi-Wan and Luminara track down Grievous. The married couple make their way to Palpatine, finding him tied down As they approach him, Dooku walks in from behind and both Force users know they will need to work together to win this fight. As Dooku ignites his Crimson Blade, the fight begins. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan and Luminara confront Grievous on the bridge, where the Jedi Killer ignites all 4 lightsabers. They clash as both Obi-Wan and Luminara fall back to Sorsu. This allowed Grievous to take the upper hand and he swung violently and recklessly, using all 4 blades to his advantage. Being a droid, Grievous grew tired in the traditional sense, like a normal combatant would when fighting Sorsu. This meant that Obi-Wan and Luminara had to double their efforts. As Grievous swung violently, Kenobi took this opening, chopping both of his robotic hands off, while Luminara focused on the cyborg's chest. Grievous defended, but then Obi-Wan swung harder from the side. There were too many attacks coming at once, and Grievous was caught in his side by a lightsaber, causing him to drop and be destroyed. Both Obi-Wan and Luminara shared a glance of approval, but then they wasted no time, as they ran back through the ship to find their apprentices. Back in the observation chamber, Anakin and Barriss fought Dooku together. Their bond allowed them to fight as one, and even Dooku took some time to understand their fighting style. As they fought, Anakin and Barriss communicated through the Force, and they coordinated what they were going to do together. It was an insanely powerful ability, and one Dooku had never seen before. But just like Revenge of the Sith, Dooku had his orders, and with all of his might, he raises Barriss with the Force, choking her before throwing her against the railing with an unparalleled amount of force, causing her to fall unconscious. Anakin's heart sank as he watched the woman he loved get beaten by Dooku. He felt his emotions rise in a way he didn't even know was possible. Since not destroying the Tuscan Raiders, Anakin hadn't delved into the dark side at this point, but for the first time, he would. Dooku congratulated him, and said that once he gets a taste of the dark side, he won't want to stop. Anakin re-engaged and fought with a level of strength he hadn't done before. Red clashed with Blue as Dooku encouraged Anakin, telling him to use his anger, to use the fear of not knowing whether Barriss is alive or dead. Anakin fully sinks into the dark side as he chops both of Dooku's hands off, placing his saber against his throat so he can't move. Anakin tells Dooku that this was his punishment for hurting her, and declares that he is under arrest. But then Palpatine interjects. He instructs Anakin to kill him, that Dooku is too powerful to be kept alive. Dooku looks at his master like he's gone insane, trying to figure out whether this is just part of his plan or if he's truly willing to let him die. Anakin says he shouldn't, that it's not the Jedi way, but Palpatine says that he almost killed his beloved, and so he deserves his revenge. Anakin studies Palpatine and pauses for a moment, asking how he knows they are together. Palpatine says he's the Chancellor, and as such, is privy to all information in the galaxy. The Dark Lord then turns and tells Anakin, "Do it." As Anakin goes to follow orders, Obi-Wan and Luminara run in, and Obi-Wan yells at Anakin to stop. Anakin was confused and, well, shocked. He didn't understand what was happening. Luminara runs over to her Padawan as Barriss slowly wakes up, confirming she is okay and not injured. Palpatine begins to panic as he calculates his odds. Dooku looks over at Obi-Wan and begs for help to not let Palpatine kill him. Dooku said that this isn't what Qui-Gon would have wanted. Palpatine told him to be quiet, but it was too late. Dooku had already seen that his master had turned on him, and now Dooku had nothing left to do except tell the Jedi that Palpatine is the Sith Lord. The facade that kept Palpatine intact completely shatters. He knows he has to act quickly if he is going to survive. In one move, he uses Force Lightning and kills Dooku, while simultaneously releasing his chains and summoning 2 lightsabers from his sleeve. He kicks Anakin back as all Jedi ignite their sabers in unison. The fight begins, and Palpatine moves at a speed none of them thought was possible. Kenobi uses Sorsu to defend himself, and as the Master of Form 3, he is able to dodge all of the Sith's attacks. Anakin and Barriss communicate through the Force and assist each other in blocking the Sith strikes. But Luminara was left defenseless, and Palpatine presses his attacks and stabs her through the chest. Barriss screams in pain as her master dropped to the floor. Palpatine cackled as he mocked the Marillion. The fight continues, and Palpatine quickly stabs Obi-Wan in the arm and leg, sending him out of the fight, leaving only Anakin and Barriss. But as they stood alone, their Force bond only intensified. They felt the warmth of their bond as they re-engaged in the fight, speaking to one another and blocking each other's strike as one. Palpatine soon realized that he wasn't fighting two people, but instead one. Fear becomes written all over his face, and Anakin and Barriss work together and use their strength in the Force to overwhelm the Sith Lord. And when Palpatine makes a mistake, Anakin and Barriss strike at the same time, stabbing Sidious and killing him. They all sighed in relief. Obi-Wan was brought back to Coruscant and healed, along with Luminara's body as she was placed in the Jedi Pie Room. The Clone Wars quickly came to an end with the death of Grievous, Dooku and Sidious, as the Separatist leaders surrendered and the Republic officially won the war. Obi-Wan vouched to the Council about how pivotal Anakin and Barriss were in defeating the Sith, and as such, they were both granted the rank of Master. They were both extremely happy and believed they did this together. 5 years passed and the galaxy was still at peace. Anakin and Barriss had secretly moved into an apartment in the city where they lived together. After the war, they both decided to take on more diplomatic and peaceful roles in the Order so they could both be on Coruscant together more often and not be separated by long missions and assignments across the galaxy. Eventually, Barriss discovered she was pregnant, and the time came for both to reveal their marriage to the Council, since Barriss clearly underwent physical changes. However, much to their surprise, the Council didn't expel them. They said in rare circumstances the Council allowed Jedi to have families, and since Anakin and Barriss had been inseparable since they were kids, and had both remained pivotal figures in the light, it was clear that they could manage their attachments. Therefore, the Council granted Anakin and Barriss permission to be openly in love. This led to a new era of Jedi, where slowly love became accepted and even encouraged. Anakin and Barriss's children would join the Jedi Order and be raised to become powerful Jedi Knights. Anakin and Barriss were both extremely happy and in love, and they would live the rest of their lives in peace, having fulfilled the prophecy and ushered in a new era for the Jedi Order.
Hey guys, before we continue the video, I'd like to announce a flash sale we're doing for our most popular deluxe sabers at Fantasy Sabers: the Chosen One, the Sun, the Negotiator, and Dark Father. These are discounted to $149, the lowest price they have ever been, and will never return to this price. We offer the best sabers on the market with premium build quality and insane effects, as well as the most affordable sabers out there. Spend over $299 and we'll chuck in a mystery saber for free. Don't miss out, this is a short sale that ends on the 12th of February.